All right. Well, look, as Jaylen Brown told us on Twitter and then in his post game in Denver, winter always turns to spring. You know what? It's officially spring and it's good. The energy changed like Jaylen told us was going to happen in late January, even though he claims that had nothing to do with Boston, with the club floundering and sitting around 500. Well, 18-3 since, winners of 21 of 25. And the Celtics right now are only a half game out of second place in the Eastern Conference. Welcome in, everybody. Adam Kaufman. This is Celtics Beat. Evan Valenti here as always, because even if he's not on the mic, he's certainly producing. So he is always with us. And here as well, often as any other guest, Ian Thomsen. We always love to have him. Ian, how are you?
Great, thanks. How are you?
Look, I couldn't be better. I'd love to. I don't want to say that I'm the type of person that looks for something to complain about, because honestly, I'm not. That's a different Adam that you hear on the airwaves oftentimes. But with respect to the Celtics team, there is nothing, Ian, to complain about. Life is good. It's a 4-game road trip. They're 3-0 to start, finishes up in Oklahoma City tonight. All 3 games thus far in Golden State against certainly a championship contender, in Sacramento against a not great team, and in Denver against the reigning and perhaps future most valuable player of the league, all wins by at least 20 points, all blowouts. And now you've got a Thunder team tonight, as we sit here and talk right now, that's in OKC. I know, like, scheduled losses or trap games or whatever else. I don't think so. I don't think so. Thunder have lost 9 in a row, and nobody was overworked in Denver for the Celtics. They should cruise again. This is a wonderful trip. It's a wonderful experience being a Celtics fan right now.
Yeah, and you know what? It's been earned, right? So for all the fans out there who were suffering the first half of the year, just like you're expressing that, they're all feeling like they paid their dues. And surely the players are feeling that way, and the coach, Brad Stevens, everybody with the franchise. They were all perplexed by the start of the year. They didn't see it coming. They thought the team would be playing better. It ought to be gelling. They had enough years together. Um, and it's not just the Derek White trade that's turned around. This was building before that. That's sort of like adding an extra gear to the engine, but the engine was already moving in the right direction at high speed. And then the fact that they're doing that on defense just I think, is the cause for everybody having such high expectations for the playoffs. The fact that this is a defensive team, and you may look at other teams in the East and say, okay, maybe they have the better player on their team, or they have more superpower talent on their team. But when you play defense like the Celtics are right now, it just gives you a chance against everybody. It's like the hockey playoffs with the hot goalie. Well, they got 5 guys all protecting the rim, and they have a center like they've never had. Not in the modern era. They've never had this kind of lively guy that blocks shots and moves around, and there's not a stiff on offense. They can play the ball through him. They have so many playmakers right now. No one is lost with the ball. Everybody knows what he's supposed to do. The decisions are quick. It's none of the standing around and dribbling and wondering what they're supposed to do next. It's all now playing basketball without thinking, and they were thinking so much in the first half of the year, and now they're so much better at all of those things. Jayson Tatum, I'd love for us to talk about this as we move on, but is Jayson Tatum the guy that can lead a championship team? And it didn't seem likely in the first half of the year, and now it's something really to talk about. We should talk about that.
To everything that Ian's talking about, Evan, we've spent time on this in past shows. This is not new. I mean, I came out and I said it after that win over the Nets against Durant and Irving at the Garden that, that was kind of what I needed to see for a full buy-in. I was tempted. I was teetering. I wanted to be there in terms of what's this team ceiling? Are they truly a championship contender this year? But with everything Ian just talked about, and obviously some of the wins that we've seen since, if you're left in the dust, if you're anyone out there on social media right now, or a talking head, media, TV, radio, whatever, and you're sitting there and saying, like, well, I don't know what you're waiting for. I don't know what you're waiting for with this team, short of actually going out in the postseason and doing it, because we're not going to see anything else in the final 10 games of the regular season, I don't think, short of winning all of them, that is going to take you yet another level with this club, with where they're at right now, where they've been for a couple months.
Yeah, this team is outrageous currently. I was reading Greeny's blog this morning. Shout out Greeny, Barstool Sports, obviously, and about all the guys that Jayson Tatum has gone up against recently and taken down. KD and Kyrie being one of them. They've done this to Jokic a few times here in 2022. John Morant, that was gone. Trae Young, that, toasted him. He's gone. The only game that was tough for them was the Mavs game, and the Mavs, who've been one of the best defensive teams in 2022, much like the Boston Celtics, provided themselves a very worthy adversary there. Luka was outrageously good, like he normally is. Like, that's the only guy that they didn't have any success against. And I mean, like, any meaning they didn't win the game. I mean, obviously Tatum was great in that game, and they came, a Spencer Dinwiddie 3-pointer away from maybe winning that game in overtime or whatever. But they've had challenges in front of them. I mean, it's interesting. They've gone from the team that caught everybody at the right time. That's why they're winning games. So, now they're just stacking up wins against playoff teams, either in the East or the West. And at this point, it can't be ignored. And as we talked about, the past shows with Tatum and how his ascension has been wonderful to watch, it is the rest of the team that has come up behind him and really stepped up too. And you don't go on the run they went on yesterday in the second quarter, the 15-0 run in about 4 minutes, without everybody else stepping up. And Tatum, I think, in that run hit 1 3-pointer, but it was Peyton Pritchard, it was Grant Williams, it's Rob Williams, it's everybody. It's infectious right now. And when you have the rotation they have their 7 or 8 guys that they clearly like. They're about Derek White hitting shots away from throwing perfect games. And I'm serious about that. If Derek White starts hitting threes, then you have a serious problem in your hand to field a team. Grant, his little regression, that's come back. He's hitting shots now. Peyton Pritchard with his newfound rotation spot after Schroeder's gone. He's 9 for his last 9. He's 9 for his last 9 from 3-point range. Peyton Pritchard, he's hitting shots right now. As I've said repeatedly on Twitter, once Tatum starts hitting shots, he's first team All NBA, and now he's starting to hit shots. Jaylen Brown, after his little bit of a stumble after coming back from the ankle injury, he's had 30-point games in back-to-back. I mean, it's just exactly what you want to see this time of year. And like Kaufman, you and I were texting last night after the first half. I'm like, this game's over. Game's over. They win in Denver, and in about 5 minutes, they said, no, game's over. And then, of course, Tatum at the end, I think it was the fourth quarter, he gave the kiss of death, after he hit a big 3. That's curtains, baby. But it was curtains in the second quarter. It wasn't curtains at the end. I'll give Denver some credit. They made a little bit of a run in the second half, but that game was, it was perfect. It was perfect. And then you're seeing more than that, more of that than less lately. And as we talk about often, Kaufman, in our chats, off camera, it's almost like you're mad when they don't play. It's like I need them to play more, because I just really enjoy watching what's happening on the floor currently.
Well, even the game in Sacramento, it was a Friday night, and everybody in my house is asleep, and I'm sitting there, I'm going, yeah, obviously, like, I love this team, I'm going to watch, but like, normally, I'm not going to lie, normally that's the kind of game against a bad team where you just know it's over, where at halftime, I'm like, okay, that was great, game's in hand, I'm going to put on a movie. But I wanted to watch the second half, because this team is just steamrolling other teams out there, and it's fun to watch. It wasn't, are they going to win? It's how much are they going to win by? And, continuing to get a look, obviously, at the rotation, who's going to be involved. We got back-to-back games now with at least 30 points for both Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, something that hasn't happened for Celtics teammates since Larry Bird and Kevin McHale back in 1988. You want to talk about Jayson Tatum. Everybody wants to talk about Jayson Tatum. Let's do that. Denver fans, and again, Denver fans, or at least Celtics fans in Denver, but nevertheless, he's getting MVP chance in Denver, where you have the actual MVP, the defending MVP for the home team, Nikola Jokic, who I believe, if I had a vote, which certainly I don't, he's the MVP again this year. And yet it's Jayson Tatum who is outplaying him, getting the MVP chance on the road. He was asked about it, said, obviously, it's a great feeling. It's even more special getting it on the road than getting it at home, because obviously of just the environment takes you to a new level. And, you were talking about, and obviously we want your thoughts. You were talking about, can Jayson Tatum be a guy that takes your team to that championship level? We extensively last week talked to Jared Weiss about, is he in the MVP conversation? Truly, in my mind at the time, and I've gone back and forth with people like Cedric Maxwell, among others, on Twitter since when, he was calling me out about my opinion. I said, no, I don't think he is. As great as he's playing, as much as, he could be first team all NBA like Evan's talking about. To be truly in the conversation, it means you have a chance of winning. That's how I view it. You can't just be like 4 or 5 and, it's a landslide in the votes. For whoever wins the thing, you got to have a chance to win the award, to really be in the conversation. And hard pressed to see him beating out the likes of Joker, Giannis, and Embiid. But let me ask you a hypothetical here. If the Celtics continue to do what they're doing collectively and actually finish with the 2nd seed in the East ahead of Embiid, ahead of Giannis, obviously Joker's in the other conference, am I selling Tatum short this year?
It's there's a little bit of like a presidential election kind of thing to these MVP races, and it's hard. They're slow moving, right? The momentum's slow moving. Actually what it's a little bit like is when they talk about in the Navy trying to turn an aircraft carrier around. You just can't do it instantly. It just takes a while. So I can't see him winning it this year, but I can see him being on a bunch of ballots, and being 5th in the race, something like that. And then that sets him up for next year. So the MVP thing is a valid thing to be talking about with him. He should definitely be one of the candidates. I don't think anybody should think he's going to win it. Their schedule down the stretch is really tough. I think it's 3 non-playoff teams and everybody else, and a lot of teams have skin in the game that they're going to be really trying to fight for their own position. So it's not going to be an easy stretch. Right now, they're totally healthy. We know in the NBA, you can't count on that from day to day. I actually think bringing Neesmith back is going to be a big thing because they're going to need him. It's like having an extra arm in the bullpen, and you can't have enough. And if they're going to have a deep playoff run, they're going to need that guy because something's going to go wrong. Everything looks great right now, but they're going to be going up against tougher teams and playoff series, and it's not going to. Peyton Pritchard isn't going to be making all his threes, and it's just not going to be as easy as it is right now. Which is not to criticize what's going on right now. They're doing everything they should right now, but it's just not going to be this easy going forward. As far as Jayson Tatum, what I'm focused on is this question of if you go back to 1980, starting with the Bird Magic era, the modern era of the NBA, all but one of the championships has been won by 17 players. So we're talking 41 championships, and they've been hoarded by 17 guys. The one outlier is the Detroit Pistons of Chauncey Billups. Mm-hmm. We can't call him a great player. But all the others, if you didn't have one of those 17 guys, you weren't going to win it. So we're talking Magic, Larry, Moses Malone, Isaiah Thomas, Michael Jordan, Hakeem, Tim Duncan, Shaq, Dwayne Wade, Garnett, Kobe, Dirk, LeBron, Kawhi, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Giannis. Those 17 guys, it's not like this in any other sport where you have to have that guy to win the championship. And I put together this list back in 2011 when I was doing my book, The Soul of Basketball. It sounds like I'm hawking my book, but I'm really doing this to talk about Jayson Tatum.
Yeah.
And I had the list, and back then it was like a dozen guys, or maybe 13. And I showed it to Mitch Kupchak right before he was GM of the Lakers at the time. And I was out in LA and I showed him the list, and he looked and he goes, well, the interesting thing about this list is you never know who's going to be the next guy. And some of these guys on the list, they came out of nowhere. Dirk came out of nowhere. No one saw him winning the championship going in. Kawhi Leonard came out of nowhere with the Spurs the first time. Dwayne Wade. That's how it would be for Tatum. He's been building up, but if he were to make a run through the playoffs, and win it all somehow at the end, he'd be one of those surprise guys that got the momentum going and won it. But he's showing all the signs of these other guys. He's showing all of the prerequisites. His team is playing defense. He's got this balance between looking out for himself and helping others. He's got the size and the strength to dominate and the athleticism to dominate in a variety of ways. He's making big shots. He can get to the basket. He's going to the free throw line now like he's never done before, which is always a huge indicator of superstardom in the NBA, getting to the free throw line. So you look at all of it together. I just, that to me is the turning point when you can start to say to yourself, is Jayson Tatum capable of being one of those guys? Because you can't win the championship without that guy, and it's got to be him.
So I'm just kind of thinking about this as we sit here, but certainly in any sport, but we're focused on the NBA. There are tiers of player, right? There's scrub, there's role player, there's good player, there's great player, there's all-star, there's superstar, but then you get to, all-time player. And I certainly believe, I don't think that by definition, Jayson Tatum is a superstar yet. I think he's playing at a superstar level, but I think you need to do it for an entire season to be called a superstar. And we know what happened the first half of this year. We know what happened parts of last year. He's not there yet. He'll get there. I certainly believe Jayson Tatum will be a superstar, and I'm not alone in that. I've been saying it for years. So have other people. This is not a hot take by any stretch, but there are times that, like, I was listening to NBC one night. It was the pregame show. Chris Mannix is on. And he's saying how he believes that one day Jayson Tatum is going to be the Celtics' all-time leading scorer. He's going to pass John Havlicek. Now, he's like 20,000 points away from doing that. Mathematically, Kenny, sure, he can do it in the next 10, 12 years easily. He is certainly of the age where if he stays healthy, he can do it. Now, I'm not 1,000% convinced in today's era generation of basketball that he's going to be a Celtic long enough to do it. I hope he is. But you can't, we can't be convinced that he's going to be another Kobe, another Duncan, another whatever. Like, guys do change teams. But do you ever feel like in watching Jayson Tatum's growth, he's 24 and he's setting all sorts of statistical records for, doing this by X age. At what point are we comfortable saying that we think we might be watching an all-time player in Jayson Tatum?
Oh, you'll know that after he wins the championship. If he doesn't win the championship, then we will not be having that conversation. Unless he's one of those rare few, like Charles Barkley, where you have to give him his due, and he was a great player. But Charles is still an outsider, and every time you watch TNT,
he's reminded of
Shaq always turns and says, "Kenny, you know what I'm talking about." And he starts talking about winning championships, and he's leaving Charles out of the conversation. This is not football. Dan Marino is one of the great players of all time. He didn't win the championship, and he can get by on that in football. Ted Williams can get by in baseball. Basketball, this goes back to Bill Russell. Bill Russell is the most influential player in the history of basketball, because he established that to be a great player, and he did it at Will Chamberlain's expense, to be a great player, you have to win championships. And not only did he show that you have to win championships, he showed how you win them by emphasizing defense first and teamwork and making the other players better. He established all that. When Michael Jordan was leading the league in scoring and doing his impression of Wilt Chamberlain, that wasn't enough for Michael Jordan. He knew he was nobody until he won championships. And it was the mission that drove him. It's driven every player ever since Bill Russell. And so if Jayson Tatum isn't winning a championship, especially with the Celtics, he just doesn't rate. He's a really, really good player, but he wasn't one of these 17 that we're talking about. You have to be one of the 17 to be really, really special in this age.
Ev, are you falling asleep at night just, laughing at the people who suggested separating Tatum and Brown now?
Yeah, it was ridiculous then. It's ridiculous now. Shout out Jalen Rhodes, the only one that was on an actual national television saying it was a dumb idea. Shout out to Jalen. That's because that's the big thing now is like you look at the C's team from a national perspective and everybody's like, well, they have enough scoring. Their defense obviously is good enough. They're holding teams to under 42% shooting for the season still, I believe. After last night, I think Denver shot 40% from the field. They have an elite defense to get you there. It's just that they have enough scoring, and primarily it's directed at Jaylen Brown. And like as much as people want to talk about Jaylen Brown being the second banana and not being as good of a scorer as Jayson Tatum is, like, yeah, I totally understand that. But Brown, his last 2 games, 30 points apiece. I'm not sure what else you want him to do. He had that injuries coming back from that. But like when you when you have this team functioning at the level they are right now, and it's literally everybody contributing, whether it's Jalen or if it's Grant Williams or Al Horford or whatever, like it doesn't really matter. Breaking those two up was always dumb, always going to be dumb, because that's where go through Ian's list. Ian, how many guys are wing players on that list? I mean, Shaq maybe being the most dominant big outside of like, I don't know, Kareem and a couple of rare exceptions in that list, but Shaq and Kobe being together, one wing, one big player. But a lot of times they're going to be wing players. LeBron's a wing player. Dwayne Wade's a wing player. You have Nowitzki being one of the few big guys. Tim Duncan being one of the few big guys. But Kawhi's a wing player. There's not a lot of wing depth in the league, and if you have 2 of the top 10 wing players on your roster, that's going to go a long way. And now that Tatum has ascended to the playmaking level that he's ascended to, Jalen is trying to figure out how he can play off that and still be successful. There's still wrinkles they can tinker with to make that pairing even more deadly in terms of their offensive sets, where, maybe Tatum screening for Jalen, or, vice versa, where they try and play off each other that way. But like trading those two guys, one of those two guys is always dumb. We've always said that in this show forever. They needed to keep this together for longer to see what they really have. And now that they've done that and they haven't panicked and traded one of them, now you're seeing the fruit of their labors. And it's like, when you look at the question of, is Jaylen Brown good enough to stop or good enough to carry this team as their second option? I'm sitting here saying, well, is there a defense out there that can contain these two guys when they're hitting on all cylinders? Because you look at the Eastern Conference, I mean, Miami's a really good team, and Spoelstra never gets enough credit for what they've built down there. They're a good defensive team, and Bam Adebayo can make things difficult. Jimmy Butler's very good defensively. They definitely have some good pieces. You look at Milwaukee with Giannis as a defensive player. He's really good. Drew Holiday's very good. Middleton's long. They can slow some guys down, no question. Boston's really good, but they're, can't play themselves. Philly, obviously, is not a team that I worry about anymore, especially on the defensive end. A team like Toronto with Nick Nurse and how they could scheme up some things maybe to slow them down for a bit. We'll see. But like, my point being, there's not a lot of defensive guys out there that's going to be able to stop these two when they're really humming. And as you saw in Denver last night, when they are, you're going to get buried very quickly. These two guys have always upped their game every offseason, or for Tatum's perspective, in the middle of the season. And now that they're both healthy, things are going really well. The rest of the team is falling in place. It's like, yeah, why wouldn't you want to keep these two guys, together for as long as you possibly can? Where it felt like 6 months ago, it's like almost inevitable you're going to break them up. It was always dumb. It will always be dumb, especially with the lack of wing depth in the NBA. And now that things are going well, the fact that the national media is starting to see it is a little bit more calming to this guy, and I'm sure everybody else all over the place.
Ian, I imagine you're on board with all of that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Jaylen Brown is making the big shots down the stretch. And so if he's going to be the number 2 guy on the title contender, he has to be able to do that, and you can think about all these different championship teams over the year. They always had that secondary scorer. I mean, the last Celtics team, it was Ray Allen. And then, Garnett really is their third scorer. So really the question, I don't think anybody should be worried about Jaylen Brown because of his versatility. He's shown he can make big jump shots out to the 3-point line. He can get to the basket. Both guys give them easy baskets in transition. And their offense is so much built on their defense, and gets them into a tempo that puts the opponent's defense on the heels. That as long as they're playing defense, it creates this whole sense of teamwork, right? Where they're all pushing and everything, and everybody knows the hierarchy. It's Jayson and Jaylen. And then really, who's going to be the number 3 guy? With the Celtics, the old Celtics teams with Garnett was the 3rd guy. But you think about the Miami Heat teams that won. Okay, it's LeBron and Wade, and then Chris Bosh was very often an afterthought as the 3rd guy. He was there when they needed him, but very much not getting touches or scoring a lot in the big games. It would be all those 2 guys. So when people question, do the Celtics have enough scoring to win the championship? I think what they're really saying is, who is that 3rd guy? But if you look back at a lot of these championship teams, a lot of times the 3rd guy gets overlooked anyway. So their style of play to win it would be with defense. And if they're playing Miami or Milwaukee in the playoff series, those are going to be rough, hard-hitting games. Might be some low-scoring games. Might be some ugly games. And that's when the defense is going to really be tested. Because that's how they're going to win those kinds of series, is with their defense.
So I know the old adage, obviously it's cliche at this point, but talk to the Dennis Rodmans of the world. Defense wins championships, obviously, Evan or Ian, well, both of you. We're looking at what really could be an historically great defense in the NBA. Obviously, it has lapped the field.
I've been saying it for months. Once you start holding teams to the same field goal percentage as the 04 Pistons, you get my attention fully, especially when the pacing is way different now. Way more shots now. The pace is much faster. The efficiency between everybody shooting threes and trying to take layups is much different. But if you can hold a team for an entire season, your opponents to 42% shooting from the field, which is what the 04 Pistons did, you're in special territory there.
Well,
if you look at what Grandy's been tweeting out at 3:00 in the morning the past couple of nights, because he's been on the West Coast, you're going to see some of the stuff some of the advanced numbers are just absolutely outrageous on this team. The defense is one big part of that for sure.
Well, looking obviously just at the collective, it's been the best defense all season long, statistically speaking, save for like the first 2 weeks of the year. But overall, Celtics have the best defense. But you want to go back to, when this all turned, which is January 8th, is where the run began for the Celtics. They have far and away the best defense, like lapping the field, best defense, and then an offense, because great defense leads to good offense, an offense that is borderline top 5 in the NBA in terms of the collective and offensive efficiency and points per 100 possessions and all of that. So Ian, I guess what I'm wondering is this defense so good, with what you've seen, with what you expect it to be, again, provided health, is it so good that you just believe that this team in a playoff series, in a 7-game series, can compete with anybody, that there's no one that you don't view as an even playoff series? Doesn't mean the Celtics would go into every series as a favorite or anything like that. Like, there are certainly teams in the East that do scare me, Milwaukee at the top of that list, but where you believe the Celtics defense is good enough to where any series that they play, first round and certainly beyond, is going to be a competitive one.
Yeah, if you put it like that, yeah, going to be or could be. I'm personally not at the point where I'm saying, okay, they are a great defensive team. I don't think you say that until they've shown they're a great defensive team by going through the playoffs on their defense. I mean, it looks great right now, but and everything's going very well right now. It's almost too good to be true, right? But when they get into the playoffs, I mean, we just all know somebody's going to get hurt. Maybe 2 guys get hurt. They're going to go up against a hot team, or something's going to happen. There's going to be all sorts of curveballs here. And does your defense hold up under those circumstances? Do you get screwed over at the end of a game that you should have won because of a bad call, or somebody makes a half-court shot or something like that? There are all sorts of tests coming up, and they have not passed those tests yet. They just haven't. They're doing everything they can at this point of the year to create a sense of promise, to get people to believe in them. I mean, you couldn't ask them to do anything more than they're doing right now, but they haven't done it. They haven't done anything, especially in this town. If we were in Memphis or something, it'd be a different point of view, right? But here, everybody here knows when you've really done it. And the only time you really done it is when they're getting ready to put the parade together. So those are the high standards here. And I think for the first time since they've been here, because they were just too young before, the 2 key guys understand the standard, and they're embracing that. I mean, remember Jaylen Brown saying to Danny, we're just as good as your teams back in the 80s, right? Remember he said that a few years ago, and you're thinking, oh my God, this guy, how can you possibly win if that's your perspective? But now I think they understand just how tough it is and what they're up against. And and they've got a coach from the Popovich school, and they've had hard times, and they had hard times a few months ago, and they overcame it. How did they overcome it? By doing all the hard things. So look, they're doing everything right now, but I'm just not going to say that they're there or that you can count on them. They don't even know for sure if they can count on themselves right now. When guys win the championship for the first time and they don't know how to talk, they can't find the words. They're crying. They're overcome. It's because they weren't sure if they had it in them. They weren't sure if they could win it until they won it. That's true with just about every player. And so I think that's where they are right now. It's a great place to be, but they're not there yet.
So, Ev, we were talking yesterday about this time, and of course, that was before what happened in the NBA last night beyond the Celtics. And I don't remember exactly what the standings looked like at that point, but they've moved around a little bit. And as I mentioned, the C's, Miami's in first. Then you have the Bucks 3 games back. Sixers and C's, they are effectively tied at 3.5 back of first. Then you have the Bulls 5.5, the Cavs 6, and then you got the Raptors, Nets, Hornets, Hawks currently sitting in the play-in tournament. And it's probably going to be some combination of that or a team or two that's ahead in the East. I think we can count out the Wizards and Knicks from any sort of contention at this point with about 10 games to go. So there's so much talk right now about, freeze the standings. You don't want to be the 2. You don't want to face the Nets in round 1 and all of this stuff. And to me, it's kind of a waste of time to even project out a first round playoff because at the moment, everything is so fluid. These teams in the top 4 or 5 are so close in the standings as I outlined. But beyond that too, I just this is, if ever there were a team, and I've advocated in the past, for come game 82 and this matchup versus that matchup, when you kind of have a choice in it and how you can evaluate that sort of thing. But I don't see this team playing the way it's playing, being scared of anyone, like I talked about, but also tinkering with anything to try to align anything to, avoid a team or go for a team that they desire. I think it's, cards are just going to fall wherever they fall. And I think they're good with that. Whether they should be or not, I don't think they're scared of the Nets.
No. And I'll pivot a little bit in terms of what I said yesterday with you on a text message. Everybody's trying to avoid the Nets because the thought of playing Kyrie, and Katie together is really daunting. And I don't discount that because Kyrie, when he plays, is out of his mind right now. He's ridiculous right now. I mean, when a couple of the games he's had, the one in Orlando was just an absolutely ridiculous game. But I'll say this, if you're going to catch the Nets, you'd rather catch them early than late, because I do believe that as we get further and further away from today's date, the more likely it is Kyrie's playing at home. I also think that there is something to be gained by the fact that Boston at one point, not so long ago, was the 11 seed, not even in the play-in tournament. Mm-hmm. To go from there to second place would be an all-time swing, I think, maybe in NBA history, to be frankly honest with you. It is an absolutely ridiculous turnaround. And I think given the confidence this team is playing with, I don't think that you're looking at anybody saying, yeah, we don't want to play them. The teams that, look, every team in the East has at least something going for it. I think with the exception of maybe Toronto, but Toronto's got Nurse and they're playing super well together. And Pascal Siakam has played significantly better second half of the season. Fred VanVleet is always a guy that thrives in the playoffs. So it's not like I'm discounting them either. They're a good team. They just don't have that superstar type talent that some of these other teams do. But if you look at every other team, I mean, the only team I'm truly afraid of is the Milwaukee Bucks, because Giannis can go off for 50 points in a game 6 in the NBA Finals and totally derail your entire season just by doing that. So with the exception of Milwaukee, I don't think Boston should really be afraid of any team. So if they get the 3 seed, great. But honestly, 2 or 1 seed or bust here. Have as many home games as you possibly can. I don't. People are like, oh, they should try and be the 4, so get the 4 or 5. Well, then you got to go on the road and play Miami. That's not going to be fun. Okay, not going to be fun. Oh yeah, get the 3 seed, so that way you get 6. You avoid, the potential Raptors, or maybe the Net. No. Get the 2 seed, so you're playing Milwaukee at home. Get one of the top 2 seeds, and that way the only time you're on the road is a potential playing the 1 seed Miami, And then at that point, you're in the Eastern Conference Finals, and hell, anything can happen at that point. So all the people that are like, oh, they should jockey for a position. They should look for the 3, the 4. No. Finish the season the best you can. Give yourself as many home games as possible, and let the chips fall where they fall. Everybody trying to be like, oh, yeah, Philly is tanking, so they avoid, the Nets. Well, that might be true, but that shouldn't be Boston's mentality. Boston's mentality should be, we should finish the season as strong as we can, get as many home games as we can, and just let the chips fall where they may, because every team in this conference is going to be tough. Every series you're going to play, no matter who you play, is going to be tough. There's no cheap out. Like even with the Bulls, DeRozan and Levine, plus the guys coming back and Caruso, Williams, and Ball, that's not fun. So just trust me. Get as many wins as you can, have the best seed as you can, and go into the playoffs with as many home games as possible. Anybody saying the other arguments, I think, are just, they're not looking at what they should be really looking at.
So, Ian, we've only got a few minutes left, and I want to make sure that we hit on this because since our last show, even though it feels like an eternity ago with what's been going on with the team on the floor, but since our last show was the Kevin Garnett retirement ceremony, jersey retirement there at the Garden, and it was awesome. Kudos to the Celtics. It was perfectly done, adding in the Q&A versus obviously a few years back when Paul Pierce's jersey number went up, when he just spoke, it was a different feel, obviously, but it was so great. And I think, for a certain generation of Celtics fans, and I'm, right there at the forefront of it with, Evan as well, with Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and Ray Allen, all sort of reconciling in front of everybody, even though I know there was a prior conversation and the picture at the All-Star game and all of that. But, having that moment, it was wonderful. Now, where I don't agree with KG is, saying Ray Allen's next, in terms of having the jersey up there and in the rafters. I don't see that coming. I just don't. I'll rephrase. It could happen with this ownership group, which is, it's going to sound critical framing that way, but I think they really love moments like this, and to cement moments like this, it could happen. Wick, and company could decide, let's put 20 up there for Ray Allen. I don't think it belongs. I don't think, even though historically you look up the 30 plus numbers that are up there, it's easy to have the takeaway that as long as you are a star associated with a championship, your number's going up. I think that's a little too low a standard, quite frankly, to have your number retired. And the other thing is with Ray Allen, we won't have a whole Ray Allen dialogue here, but it's sort of unfortunate that, like, he's obviously an all-time great. He's no doubt Hall of Famer. He is a Hall of Famer. But the fact that, he just bounced around as much as he did, like he played his longest in Milwaukee, he played his best in Seattle, he won his first championship with the Celtics, but he was everywhere with the exception of Miami, pretty much the same amount of time. And the accolades were generally kind of consistent, which it sort of takes you away from having your jersey retired somewhere, unless like the Bucks were, electing to do it. So I don't see it. I could be wrong, but I don't think he is next.
It's a real borderline thing. They would not have been able to trade for Kevin Garnett if they hadn't got Ray Allen first.
Sure.
So he's the one that enabled them to get Garnett and win the championship. When Garnett came in, Paul Pierce and Ray Allen played defense, and they hadn't been known for that before. And I remember Nate McMillan watching Ray Allen that season saying, "What the heck? Why didn't we have this when he was playing for us in Seattle?" So Ray Allen changed a lot with the Celtics. And every year there would be trade after the first few years. Every year there'd be trade rumors in midseason. Ray Allen and he almost got moved a couple of times, and he found out about it. So it's really borderline. A lot of cities, it'd be a no-brainer to trade Ray Allen because that'd be the only championship they have. But here it's a different metric, right? What I really liked about, what was really intriguing to me about that whole ceremony was to imagine what Jayson Tatum was thinking while he was watching it, while he was in the audience, and to get a sense emotionally of what Garnett's leadership meant to the team and how that kind of leadership turned into a championship. And he was able to feel the emotion of it from the fans and from the whole aura of the thing, and experience that. And I'm sure he's sitting there visualizing, can I be that guy too? Can I be the guy when they're putting my number up there, and they're talking about how I led the team. Well, now this is what I'm going to have to do. It must have really hit home to him. And it would not have hit home a couple of years ago because he wasn't anywhere close to doing it. But now he's feeling he's on the verge of leading a team to the championship. And he got the best possible hands-on upfront lesson by watching Kevin Garnett's retirement like that firsthand and hearing all the stories and just seeing the intensity that KG gives off, even in that setting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he was back in uniform during that whole ceremony. So I just thought that was like the great gift to this team was to have that ceremony now that they've turned the corner and they have these high hopes for themselves.
My prediction, I'll leave us with this, is the next banner to go up there, save for a championship banner, but that type of banner that goes up there, it's not going to be for Ray Allen. It's going to be Ainge. It's not 44. It's going to be the name Ainge for his contributions to the organization. I think we're a few years away from it, but I think Ainge is going to go up there from his time as a player to an architect, especially if, this team in the next year or two wins a championship with his fingerprints all over it. I think that we are absolutely going to see Ainge up there in the rafters at some point. And I think we'll see him in the Hall of Fame at some point too.
Agreed. The Hall of Fame, they split things up.
Yep.
You're either a player or an executive. That might be harder, but I bet he makes it as an executive.
Or a contributor. You could just go in as a contributor.
Yeah. But the retirement of the number, yes, that's a great call.
All right, we got to go, but we will have another show. It's a special week because we were on our little hiatus. We're going to have 2 shows this week, so we'll have another one for you Thursday or Friday. Stay with us. We appreciate you. Ian Thomsen, Evan Valenti, I'm Adam Kaufman, and 4-0. Complete the road trip tonight, C's. Get it done in OKC. Starters out there for the first half, bench for the second half, win by 30. All right, we'll see you later.